cybercrime will cost the world $6 trillion by 2021. By 2021, a business will fall victim to ransomware every 11 seconds. The cost of a data breach will reach $150 million by 2020. In 2023 alone, cybercriminals will steal 33 billion records. Americans lose $15 billion annually due to identity theft. It takes 196 days on average to identify a data breach. In 2020, the rate of attacks on building control systems increased by over 600%. This year, the rate is expected to almost double. Are you ready?
Started when I was young, and I worked with computers and started playing with them, and learned very quickly that I really liked working with computers, and I liked breaking different pieces of code, and eventually I realized there was a lot of money to be made in it. I wouldn't say an obsession, but I do get the same kind of thrill that I get from, any kind of sport or something that gives you, that sense of accomplishment. It's more of a rush. You get a rush from it. Well, yeah, I mean, back way before the internet became what it is today, and when we were working with early technologies, yes, the networks was where everything was at. So early networks was an easy place to hide and an easy place to actually get used to hacking into things. And so yeah, it was an interesting place to play. So things have changed. I mean, you can say they're harder, but it's really just using different mechanisms to gain access. And it used to be that you could find a vulnerability directly on the internet easily and get in. Today you have to leverage people, or you have to leverage less known technologies that have vulnerabilities. Back in, I'd say, the 2010 time frame was when there were a lot of vulnerabilities that were popping up in control systems, and what we realized was there's actually ways to get into corporate networks or into whatever targets we're going after through those control systems. And at the time, there was about 50,000 of those systems on the internet, so there was a lot of different opportunities. So it's pretty simple. You go through a standard search, or you can use Google to find some things, or you can use things like Shodan to find others. But there's a lot of different ways to take a look. You also have to realize that depending on who you're targeting and what type of access you're going after, you may look at their third-party vendors or a building systems vendors. It's not always about who's in the building. You sometimes find other avenues. So sometimes it's about getting a trusted person that's going to take you in there and not know it. The normal way we start is we start by learning about who the people are, who are we targeting. And it really depends on what it is that we're after. If it's a targeted approach, then we'll do that. Sometimes it's just shooting it out there to anybody who's going to click and get access, but typically it'll be targeted, and we're actually picking organizations that we would like to gain access to for one reason or another. And we'll do a recon session where we'll actually go look at who's on LinkedIn, who's on Facebook, figure out the things they like, figure out how a phishing attack might be structured, and then figure out the showdown angles as well. Or do they have things on the internet that we can go after? Really looking to make a plan of how we're going to approach that. So in one instance, we were looking at an organization. Their network was pretty well secured. They had the newest technologies, and so we looked at different ways that we could actually approach getting access to their network and learning what they knew. And as part of that, we realized that their building integrator had actually left a building control system on the internet. And we were able to find that, get access to that. So then we were in some of the software in their building, and we were then able to use that access to gain access to their corporate network, and from there basically gather all the data that we wanted to get and deploy ransomware and work through that situation. But so one of the reasons that we like the control system network is that it's actually an easy place to hang out and quiet. They oftentimes don't have any kind of monitoring, network level monitoring, or any kind of antivirus on the machines that are used in that environment. So it's pretty easy to get installed and sit there and monitor. Plus, a lot of times it has admin level privileges to other parts of the network, so it makes it easier for access into other areas as well. Once we understand how an integrator works and we understand their customer base, and we've figured out some of their information, we find a lot of them use the same password. So a lot of them, it'll actually be something, once we gain access to one of their customers, we can gain access to all of their customers. And it's a common practice that they have. Once I'm in the network and I can find the engineering workstation, the rest of it's easy, because the engineering workstations have access to all the different files that we're going to want, and most of the time they have access to the Excel spreadsheet that has all the passwords and IP addresses for the devices in their network that are critical. So that engineering workstation usually gets us everything that we need to know about their system. That is the first place I'm going. I want to live where the people with the knowledge live. The key, once you're in the network, though, is to make sure that you're quiet. Once you're in the network, you can actually look for systems and figure out what kind of value they may have. And that's where the ransomware comes in. Sometimes they've got a valuable network. Sometimes you just go based off of what their organization's worth, what their annual revenue is. Other times you find things in there that are much more interesting. So it could be a warehouse, or it could be something where you can actually have ransom, and it is more meaningful because it impacts the business. And in those situations, that's when it's most lucrative. That's when you can actually have a ransom be successful. Oh, of course it's fun. I mean, it's something that you get a thrill out of doing, to some extent. But I like my job. I get to do fun things on a daily basis, and it makes me happy. But it's not a personal thing for me. It's just work.